Before I turn this book in, Agent Josephine, that I finished reading, I want to give you guys a few passages from this book because it was a great book. Josephine Baker left the United States back in the 1920s, 1925, because of the hostility that she faced being an American black woman, because of the fact that she wouldn't be able to really make money as a black American woman in the United States, but she could in France. Josephine Baker was really entrenched in trying to help with World War II. And so this passage is to highlight that. This person, Wyatt, is Donna Wyatt. Okay. Wyatt was himself black and painfully aware of the growing anger and frustration among African American GIs. They'd volunteered to fight fascism in freedom's cause. They'd been trained as combatants in the U.S., but once they arrived in Morocco, they'd realized that they were being confined to logistical duties or as drivers and the like. They were being denied a frontline role, which didn't make the slightest bit of sense, especially as they were the direct targets of Nazism due to the color of their skin. The sentiments that Josephine had shared with the GIs as she mingled with him: let's win the war on racial segregation, but let's win the war against Nazis first, had truly hit home. Wyatt wanted more, much more of that. So Josephine Baker was very pragmatic. She understood what was going on abroad in this fight, and she understood what was happening at home. And that was one of the things that struck me. She was very, very optimistic in America, despite being run out of America because she was black. So that was the dilemma that I couldn't understand trying to fix, but she was well aware of what they were fighting for in the moment. The American forces were trying to be stationed in Morocco. So the Moroccans were very uneasy about segregation, and Josephine Baker was trying to set them at ease a little bit. She said, towards the bottom of this page, Josephine was painfully aware of how unsettled Moroccans were by the segregation they had witnessed in the U.S. military. At every turn, she was being challenged on how America could sponsor the Atlantic Charter and its supposed freedoms, yet not even manage to practice what it preached among its own armed forces. It was the cause of a huge amount of tension. Tonight, she intended to show them another way, to be the glue that melded all together against the one common enemy. So she was trying to play peacemaker between Moroccans and the United States Army. So at this point, Josephine is in Morocco, really trying to bridge the gap between Moroccans and the United States Army. So towards the end of this, I just want to read this last chapter. As the night wore on, a white officer remarked drunkenly that it was the first time he had ever eaten at the same table as N-words. Seeming to think he cracked a fine joke. No sooner were the words out than he was grabbed by the collar and frog marched away by an irate American diplomat, both individuals looking as white as shrouds. Even so, the words had been spoken, and those Moroccan figures within hearing were aghast. The man who made the comment did not return. The diplomat did, arm in arm with one of those who had been most offended. The diplomat was William Douglas Reed, the newly installed U.S. Vice Consul in Morocco. He'd confided in Abdi that the man he'd ejected was a drunken moron. Seated nearby, Malal Larbi El Alawi, the Sultan of Morocco's cousin, had turned ashen gray. As Reed pointed out, something needed to be done. Abdi hurried to fetch Josephine. It would take all of her charm to convince those present that the offending individual was an aberration and not the norm. Her efforts were boosted by the arrival of a fine jazz band and the fact that the music and dancing lasted until dawn. So she was supposed to play Band-Aid, act like this is not the norm for America, despite living in Jim Crow America, and segregation being the norm in America. So let's keep it. Okay, so at this point of the book, Josephine Baker, she had finished battling some kind of sickness that had her down for 2 years, and they wanted her to perform because she was a light. People loved Josephine Baker, and she was really trying to mend the wounds of segregation in the United States. So part of her stipulation for the tour was that there would be no segregation. So skip to that part that I have highlighted in yellow. Josephine has stipulated one condition regarding the present tour. There would be no segregation at any of her shows. Black and white GIs would mix freely or else she would not perform. In the spring of 1943, that simple request was still seen as controversial, anathema almost, within the United States military circles. But Josephine was adamant. What was the point in waging a war on Hitler if segregation overshadowed the Allied war effort? Not all senior U.S. Army officers encountered agreed with her, but the tour had been a blessing from the very top. So few were able to voice their objections out loud. So this is my issue that I have with America. We sit up, we go to these other countries to fight for freedom and democracy and our way of life, knowing that how we treat our people back home is just as atrocious. But that is what I love about history, and what I love about reading these books is that the lessons that we learned from back then are still applicable now. But you guys jump in the comments, tell me what you think, like, comment, share.